Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be going over the 917 tier list. This is going to be a much faster version than usual because we got to hit the road and start traveling soon. I thought we were maybe going to have one more day before we went on the road, but we're going to be leaving here very soon. So I'm just going to go through this really quickly. And as always, you can find links to this Google Doc in the description if you want to jump around and find your favorite part. Within each one of these little mini Google Docs, within the bigger Google Doc, you can find recommendations for runes, items, and a 1 to 5 system on which is my sort of assessment of how the champion performs on these different metrics. So lane pressure is how well is the champion able to get priority and put pressure on the lane. Kill threat, how likely is it that the champion's going to be able to force kills. Safety, how safe is the champion, particularly from ganks during the laning phase. Scaling is how well does the champion perform over time. And reliability is how likely is it that someone can perform well on this champion over a large amount of games. So how consistent is the champion over numerous games? And then 1 being the champion is one of the weaker champions as a support at that task, and 5 is the champion's one of the strongest at that task. Okay, so let's go ahead and get in here. All right, Rakan is going to be still the strongest pick overall, I think. Some people have said, oh, you're biased, you just love Rakan. I do love Rakan, but, I mean, he's got 2 world skins for a reason for the last couple of years, and they have nerfed him this year a few times. He's still fantastic. It's not just my opinion of these things. If you look at a lot of tier lists that are being honest, he's going to be really, really good, not just in pro, but in kind of mid-level ranked as well. So like your gold, your plat, your high silver, that type of stuff. He's still going to be pretty good, as denoted by this challenger icon that they have here in platinum. But even down in lower tiers, even if we go to iron, they still think of him as, even in iron, at the tier list, he's still going to be challenger ranked at iron. Okay? And so I think there are some, and how they get this rating basically is they have like a panel of people that vote on this. So it takes different statistical things into effect. But it also, I believe, comes down to like what their sort of panel of challengers think about the champion at certain rankings. So, anyways, he's good at all ranks. So the common myth out there that you can't play Rakan if you're in bronze, iron, or silver because he's too team reliant. I don't really buy into that, and some of the main reasons are just his kit is good in all situations. So I think he's one of the least team reliant champions. I mean, yes, you do need him, but he can play around almost anybody, so you're not reliant on a specific person. And you just have the ability to play really well from ahead and really well from behind. And that's something that a lot of champions aren't going to have, on this tier list because he can make plays, off of his R. It's on a fairly reasonable cooldown, 130 seconds. The runes we'll talk about here in a second actually make that a much lower cooldown. And you can use this R offensively. You can go in and start fights. You can use it defensively if you need to. You can use the R and then E back over to your ally to charm somebody and then knock him up. So he peels really well. He engages really well. He escapes really well. So you can get deep wards or try to rotate around the map. And if you get caught out, you're probably going to be able to get away. You can use this R in a super emergency situations just to touch the enemy and run away, with an extra 50% bonus movement speed, 100% if you actually touch him. So sometimes if you get caught out and your W's on cooldown, you might just be able to use this to get away anyways. So he's got, a free dash with his W. It doesn't require a target. He has 2 different dashes with his E, and he has the ability to speed up with quickness. And he gets a shield, which gives him a pretty decent amount in the mid game. So he's one of the safest supports out there in that respect. And he's one of the only engaged supports that can go in and get out. So if you go in, you press R, you go in with your W, you try to make the play, your allies don't follow it up, you can E, get right back out, no problem. Or if like the jungler shows up out of a bush or something, right when you go in, you can say, oh crap, and then go right back out with your E. And that's something that just no other engaged champions have. If you're playing Leona, if you're playing Alistar, anything like that, and you go in, you're in. You don't have an option to get back out. So, that makes it to where he can start fights, but he can also usually fairly safely get back out. Now, yes, you can get chain CC'd. Yes, you can get interrupted when you're trying to jump out, but at least you have the option to try to escape, right? And it will be successful a lot of the times. So I think that puts him in a really good position to just, really take over a game if you're making good engages. But then even if your team is full of a bunch of turkeys and they don't follow up on all of your engages, you'll still have the ability to, get out of those situations. So I think that's really good. Also, his itemization is quite strong. He has a bunch of different items that he can get. Now, some of this has changed. I want to throw Athene's on there. Athene's has been growing in popularity with Rakan lately. And the reason is, usually whenever he goes in to start a fight, he's going to hit someone with his ult plus his W, which is going to do, I don't know, 300 or 400 damage, depending on how many points you have in these things. And then usually a Q and an auto attack. So you're going to have built up 500 to 600 damage, which is going to convert over to like full Athene's charges. And then whenever you E back out, you're going to be able to hand out that burst healing of, 200 or 300 healing as soon as you go back out, which is really nice. And then so you have that. But then just the stats in general are pretty good on him. And this is a very efficient item. We've known this is really good. This is what made Lux very good for a while. It's still been good on Nami for a long time. It's still been good on Sona for a long time. All of the traditional enchanters have, bought this item. But people are doing it on Rakan more and more for the reasons I just talked about, because you usually front load a lot of damage right when you start a fight, and then your Athene's is charged and ready to go. And then it just has like really good components for the laning phase. Rakan has really good AP ratios. Usually can't build a lot of AP on him, but the ratios are there. You've got a 0.7 on your W. You have a 0.8 on your shield. Remember, you get to shield twice. That's really a 1.6 ratio. And then the heal off of your Gleaming Quill is a 0.7, and your passive is a 0.9. So that's how they've kind of balanced Rakan over the last half a year or so, as they've taken away some of his things, some of the reliability on his W, some of the reliability on his R, and in exchange they've just given him some AP ratios typically. And so the AP is even better on him now than it was in the past. So that allows you to get stuff like Athene's, get stuff like Ardent Sensors, scale up, have some of those big shields. But then historically, he just hasn't been able to get those items as much because he's been a little bit squishier, and it's just been a bit riskier. But people are realizing that Athene's is actually pretty good, especially if you're against another AP bot laner. And by AP, I mean anything that does magic damage in the bot lane, right? So it could be Zyra, who's growing in popularity. It could be Brand, but it could also be things like Janna or Nami or Yuumi, because it has magic resistance on it. It's got that 30 magic resist. You can get a null magic mantle early on to help you out in those matchups. And Chalice of Harmony is really great for those grindy matchups bot lane where you're just trading poke, because it translates all of your mana regen into health regen. So if you get the Chalice itself and then you get Frostfang early, you get 100% extra health regen. You might say, well, who cares about that? That's not that much. It actually is. It adds up. If you look at health regen baseline of 5 here, if you're like level 5 or whatever, and you come back with a Chalice after your first back, that's 6.5 regen. So that's 6.5 regen every 5 seconds. Times 12 is going to be, close to like 80, like 77 to 80, somewhere like that. Just quick math, health per minute. And if you're in lane for 3 minutes at a time before you go back to refresh your wards, that's going to be like over 200 health, 200 to 250 health. Your maximum health pool is only 800. So getting an extra 250 health off of that, just off of the Chalice passive, when you have Frostfang plus Chalice early on, that's giving you like more than 25% extra effective health in the laning phase. So that's really big. Like that's very, very good early on. So it gives you the mana regen that you need to try to go in for more all-ins with your W, poke more with your Q, whatever your playstyle is that you're doing in that lane. Gives you the null magic mantle, which gives you some really good resistance to some of those champions, especially all-ins from things like Brand and Zyra. And then gives you poke protection off of the Chalice passive with all that extra health that you're getting. In addition to getting Fiendish Codex, which gives you the CDR and the ability power, which is nice. And then after you complete the Athenes, of course, you get all of that stuff, but then you also get this passive, which is amazing. In fights, once again, it's usually going to be at least, 200 burst health. Healing, that is. And then if you get any other fairy charm items. So if you want to go for redemption after that, or you want to go for ardent censer or anything like that, then it's going to be you're going to get extra benefit out of that, right? So every 25% mana regen is going to give you 5 extra ability power. As far as on a cost basis, your fairy charms are basically double value. So you're paying 125 gold to get the mana regen, but then you're also getting 5 extra ability out of it, which is coincidentally worth like 105 gold. So it's pretty close to, or closer to 110 gold. So it's pretty close to you getting double value out of Fairy Charm. So it's a really good item to rush, has excellent components. The only problem is you are going to be weaker to AD. So if they have like a Kha'Zix in the jungle, like an AD assassin, or they have like Thresh plus Jinx bottom, like double AD bottom, then it's tougher to rush this. But this has been something that people have been looking at. So a lot of times, you know, you'll still want Zeke's. Zeke's has a lot more defense, has 60 armor, 30 magic resist, has the mana on it, the flat mana, which is about equivalent to the Fairy Charm mana. So that's going to be a lot better against all-ins, especially if you're going to be facing down that AD. You know, once again, they have Zed or Talon in the middle or Kiana, and then they got Kha'Zix in the jungle. You're probably still going to have to get Zeke's because you're just going to get evaporated mid-game if you don't. But if you are against some of these poke mages bottom, if they have an AP jungler or something that's not going to be as aggressive early game, LOL, you know, a non-aggressive jungler in 2019. But, you know, this is becoming a decent option. And you can even combine this with Zeke's a lot of times because, yes, you're not going to get the extra, you know, healing off of this, you know, or the extra AP, the base mana or whatever. But it still functions pretty well. It still gives you the passive. It's still going to give you all of these other things. So you could go Athenes into Zeke's if you want to, or you could go Zeke's and then go Athenes after that if you want to. So it's an option. You know, if they have a ton of AD, you can still go Knight's Vow if you want to. Redemption is still great for team fights. Redemption is amazing also with Athenes. So if you want to go like Zeke's opener and then Athenes into Redemption, that's a really powerful combo because all of the extra, the plus healing and shielding off of Zeke's applies to the healing off of Athenes. And then Redemption also has a lot of mana regen on it, which is, you know, translates over into AP on Athenes. Those two work really, really well together. So the runes that I recommend are just going to be the same that I've recommended for a while: the Guardian, Demolish, Bone Plating, Unflinching, Presence of Mind, and then Legend, Tenacity. Now, I was trying out Aftershock a lot last week, and I've kind of bounced back and forth with Guardian. You can go Aftershock instead of Guardian. I have seen a couple of top-level recons doing that. Most people still go Guardian. But the reason you would do that is if you want to like consistently trade all-ins a lot more often. So if you have a very aggressive AD carry that you can trust bot lane, you know, like someone who's got a high win rate on Lucian, Jhin, Draven, something like that, then Aftershock is going to be on a much lower cooldown. I think it's on a it's like on a 25 or 30 second cooldown. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's like a 30 second cooldown, maybe even 35. But it's on some kind of cooldown around 30 seconds, whereas early game Guardian is going to be on a 70 second cooldown, between 60 and 70 seconds for your first few levels. So you're going to be able to go for all-ins about twice as often with Aftershock. It gives you a lot of personal tankiness so that, you know, you can go in and you're not going to take any damage, you know, for those first couple of seconds whenever you Aftershock. So that can be really good if you're in these fighting lanes, or if they have an all-in lane like a Leona or a Thresh or something like that. It can be really good for ensuring that you can still posture aggressively and not worry about getting evaporated early on. So I think that is an option. But you are going to be much weaker in the mid-game because Aftershock doesn't really scale that well. And Guardian not only scales in terms of how much it shields you, but in how much it shields your ally, and the cooldown comes down quite a bit. Aftershock doesn't do anything to help your AD carry out. So most of the time, that's why a lot of people are going to take Guardian, but Aftershock could be an option that's on the table. There are still some people who go like Nimbus Cloak, Transcendence, but I really like the Presence of Mind Tenacity build. This just gives you a lot more cooldown on your ults. It allows you to make plays more often. And then Legend Tenacity allows you to take something like Ninja Tabby if you need to, or like Mobility Boots, and still have a really high level of resistance to crowd control. You can also, if they just have a ton of really long crowd control, like 2 seconds plus, you're against a Morgana or a Lux or a Fiddlesticks, a Lulu, something like that, an Ashe, then you can throw the Tenacity Boots on there as well. But just keep in mind, if it's a bunch of little small pieces of CC, that there is a cap on the tenacity. You know, the minimum amount you can be, that tenacity can reduce CC is to half a second. So I wasn't aware of that in the past, but I looked it up. People told me that on stream. That is actually correct. So if you're just getting hit by stuff that's like, you know, half-second stun, even a 1-second stun, then stacking that much tenacity, legend tenacity plus unflinching plus the tenacity boots is going to be overkill, I think. So you really only want to get the tenacity boots here if you just really, really need the magic resist, or if they have something that's like a lot of the CC is going to be 1.5 or more seconds. Remember that tenacity also does not affect... I don't know, maybe 30 minutes. Okay. It doesn't affect Malzahar or any of those. What am I thinking of? That kind of disable. It doesn't affect that. So it only affects stun, slows, things like that. Suppression, that's the word. So like Malzahar, Skarner, just be sure that you're reading the champions, you understand them correctly. Anything that's a suppression is not going to affect that. Okay. Yeah, Rakan's still going to be really good. I just wanted to talk about some of the different itemization changes that have been, you know, trending over the last couple of weeks, and then talk about some of the different runes in case you haven't watched in a while, what I'm recommending. Because I know I was trying out Aftershock, but I think it's kind of fringe. Okay, let's talk about the other ones here really quickly. Man, I wanted the whole video to be like 15 minutes. Let's see if we can go for 30. Okay, Zyra is trending up here. She did get a buff this patch on her... she did get a buff on her ultimate, which is really nice. That's at all ranks, 20 seconds off her ultimate. So that comes down to, depending on the rank, about 15 to 20 second cooldown on her ult for free. She obviously has a super powerful ultimate, so this is very, very good for her. She can't get... it's really hard for her to get CDR with her build, because traditionally she's just going to go like Leandri's, Rylai's, and that's all you can afford. Or Leandri's plus Oblivion Orb or whatever, and that's all you can afford in a game because her items are so expensive. So you just can't really get CDR. So getting 20% on your ult is very, very nice. Now, there are a lot of different rune choices people will try. I still think that Comet is going to be the best on her. You know, some people try some of those things from the Domination Tree, either Dark Harvest or Electrocute. It doesn't give you as much consistent poke in the lane. That's the thing. Like, Electrocute can give you more burst later on, especially once you get some better AP. It's going to have a better AP ratio than Comet. But even then, you got to keep in mind that in a lot of fights, Comet is going to happen multiple times because every time your plants hit people, then it lowers the cooldown on Comet. And so you're probably in most fights, unless it's like just literally you're all-inning, blowing up one person and that's it, you know, Electrocute's going to be better in that situation. But if it's like a fight with multiple people, you're going to be triggering Comet 2 or 3 times. And Comet can hit multiple people too. If they're grouped up, that Comet can hit 2 or 3 people when it lands. So just keep in mind, in a lot of in-game fights, yes, Electrocute's going to look stronger, like as a baseline number, but if you're hitting 2 or 3 people with Comet, you're getting 2 or 3 Comet procs off, it's actually going to end up doing more damage than Electrocute can do. And it's just more consistent early on, because like your trade pattern, a lot of times with Zyra, your early trade patterns are typically going to be just hit them with a Q plant. You know, the plant auto attacks them a couple of times, and that's it. And I think they changed Electrocute now to where it has to be different spells, and your plant auto attacking counts as the same spell. So if you get an auto attack in there, you know, if you Q, plant hits them, and then you auto attack them, I believe that will trigger it. But that's actually surprisingly more difficult to do than it would seem against a lot of competent opponents. Sometimes you can get that auto in there, but sometimes, you know, that Leona's just staring at you, and you're not sure if you can walk up close enough to get that auto. So it just really depends on the matchup. You know, if you're against a really passive laner, maybe you can get that in. But I just feel like Comet is a lot more consistent. There's a lot more people that are taking Comet for those reasons. With Comet, you also get Scorch, which adds up a lot in the laning phase. You know, every time you hit them with a plant, it's going to scorch them. So I just feel like it's just way easier. It's way more consistent to get that off in the laning phase, which is your Q, poke, harass. Um, and then Absolute Focus can give you some extra damage as well. You can go Transcendence for even more CDR if you want to later. But if they don't have a poke lane, if you're just against tanks there, I would probably go with Absolute Focus. That extra AP does add up. And then Mana Flow Ban just allows you to keep harassing. Yes, she does have really high base mana regen at 13, but you can never really have enough sometimes. So I think this is probably just the better collection of stuff. Domination is really good, though. You've got Taste of Blood, which I recommend, which is really good for just keeping you topped off. If you're triggering that every 20 seconds, you're going to be healing for about 1 HP per second on average, sometimes even higher depending on your AP. So that adds up, 3 minutes in the laning phase, extra 180 health. That's a lot because she doesn't have much health. And then Ulti Hunter, I like a lot. Just allows you to cast your ult, make more plays. Although you can make a really good argument for Relentless Hunter as well, because I don't like getting Moby Boots on her. I like getting Sork Boots for more burst damage. So just having that extra out of combat movement speed is really handy for rotating around the map because you just don't have anything that's going to speed you up otherwise. So I think that Relentless can be pretty good. So yeah, Zyra is really strong in general. I moved her up a lot. I think that lane domination is very important, is very powerful right now. And you should be able to 1v2 your lane as Zyra. So it doesn't even matter if they pick Vayne or Ezreal or whatever. You can probably just push everybody into their tower by yourself. The problem is you have to be able to survive ganks, so you need to be tracking the jungler really well. And you're really vulnerable in the mid game because you don't have reliable ways to start plays unless you're hiding in a bush and getting someone out of the bush, which sometimes you can do that if you get really good vision control, but if they're like sieging you down, if they're pushing you into your tower, there's not going to be a lot of places to hide. So if your team doesn't have a way to start a fight, she can be a vulnerability in the mid and late game. So you need to make sure you absolutely obliterate your lane early and just like push your advantage and get other plates, get dragons, scuttle, rift herald, anything you can get in the mid game just to accelerate and try to close out the game by 25 minutes. So she's going to be a riskier pick. She's not nearly as good from behind as Rakan is. But this extra 20 seconds does allow you to accelerate much faster because every time this is up, you should be getting a kill. You should have already forced their flash earlier, probably with just a normal E all in when they were at like 30% health, and then you've got your ult to guarantee that you're going to get those kills. It's really, really good for team fights. Whenever this is up, you can force dragons, force rift, force baron, whatever. Just make their team come to you and team fight. And she's going to be really strong. So why Zyra? I mean, she does get buffed, but people always ask me, why not Brand? Why Zyra? The big thing that it comes down to is consistency and vision control. So in the laning phase, all of her abilities can go through the wave. She does not care where the wave is. She can harass anywhere, anytime. Not only with her poke, but with her all-in. Versus someone like Brand, his all-in requires you to have a clean shot at them with your Q. So that means that there cannot be any minions that block your Q. Zyra doesn't care. She can throw the grasping roots through the minions. She can poke with her plant, with her Q through the minions. She also, incidentally, is a little bit better against things like Yasuo and Braum, who you're not going to see all the time, like those shielding type of champs that block projectiles. Stranglethorns gets through that. Your Q gets through that. Your Grasping Roots doesn't get through it, but it can trigger melee plants that can get through it. So she's just better in those kind of niche situations. And then later on in the game, you can spawn your plants to scout for you. So it basically gives you extra wards that are 800 range with your seeds. So that's super handy, and those are not shut out by control wards. So if you spawn a plant in a bush that has a control ward in it, it's still going to give you full vision of the area because the plants do not count as wards. And that is massive when you're trying to fight over control wards and fight over vision dominance later, which she, leverages very well. If you can get full vision of an area, like around Baron or something like that, she's extremely dangerous for people to try to engage into because she has so much burst damage and so much team fight potential with her Stranglethorns. So I think it's just a lot more reliable. She also incidentally has higher effective poke range than almost anybody else. So like Deadly Spines plus a plant spawn. I think the range plant 750 range, 575. Okay, so a lot less than I thought. I thought it used to be 700. Maybe they nerfed it a while back. But 575 range on the Thorn Splitter plus your Q range, your Deadly Spine range, It's going to take you up to about 1375 range. When did they nerf that? I could have sworn it was 575 range on that. But anyways, you know, approaching 1300 to 1500 damage, poke range off of your plants is just going to be higher than almost any other of these kind of like mid-range poke champions. So she has really good matchups against melee champs, so against things like, and hard engage champs too. So against things like Nautilus, against things like Thresh, she's pretty good because their hooks get blocked by the plants. So that's another thing is like, if you get good at it, you can spawn your plants in front of yourself or in front of an ally in order to soak up that blitz hook or that Thresh hook. So that's just another perk of her, is that she's about as good as it's going to get for like an all-in mage champion against hook champs. So yeah, she is still weak. If they do hook her, if they get a hold of her, she is still going to be weak, but she has a bit more game against them than something like a Brand would. Her main weakness are against poke champs, so if they have something like a Lux that outranges her, or a Xerath, or a Vel'Koz, kind of weird things like that, she can have a hard time, but otherwise she's going to be really strong against most things in the laning phase. Ezreal later on can be a problem too, because he can just hang out outside of your range and poke you. Okay. But yeah, Zyra going to be super strong, especially at gold and lower. I think you have to pick this champion if she's up or you're trolling. I don't know. I think she's really, really good at gold and lower, but I think she still has some game in platinum. Starts to fall off in diamond, but still going to be very strong. Okay, Nami. Nami's still going to be just a good all-around champion. She has really consistent trading in the laning phase. You know, her W, it's point click. You can't miss it. She can do all of her stuff through the minion wave as well, very similar to Zyra, so you don't have to worry about minion positioning. Which is really nice. She has great range for an enchanter. A lot of enchanters are going to have lower range. Thinking about something like, you know, Soraka and Sona, you know, maximum effectiveness. Even something like Lulu is going to be, you know, lower range a lot of times. Now, yes, Soraka does, you know, she can hit her Qs from long range, but her healing is pretty short range. It's like 450 or 500 range on the healing. So offensively, she has good ranges. Defensively, she has good ranges. She has a CC that can hit multiple targets. You just put 1 point in it, gives you 1.5 second CC. Some people have been experimenting around with getting multiple points in this. You always max W first because that's your trading, that's your healing, that's your powerhouse spell. But usually you max Tidecaller's Blessing because it's just more consistent output of damage. You know, can do up to 255 damage. Applies a really nice slow. Can help you apply Ardent Sensor to, apply Ardent Sensor to people if you take Airy, which you should. So you can use your E, put it on your AD carry, that'll give them Ardent Sensor, and then you can use your W to heal your front line, and that'll give them Ardent Sensor as well. So I think E is really the best if you're going Ardent Sensor, which you should on her as the max. But you know, if you put multiple points in this, you can lower the cooldown on it a little bit. I think it's funky. Some people have asked about it, so I would say the vast majority of the time you want to max W and then max E and then Q, but, you know, you can try to do Q if you want. It does put out more damage if you're landing it all the time. It does lower the cooldown on it, so in theory you will have, you know, maybe one more of them in a fight, maybe, depending on the timing of the fight, but I just think it's a lot less consistent. Whereas this, it's just always going to work. You just press E on the AD carry, it works. It's going to apply the slow. They're going to do maximum damage with it because all you have to do is auto attack. And it has that benefit with Ardent Sensor. But yeah, she plays really well with Athenes. You know, even on the same spell, when you do damage to somebody with W and it bounces back to someone else, it does damage, and then it comes back. It gets that bonus healing off of Athenes. So because she puts out so much, now Tidecaller's Blessing counts as damage on your AD carry, not from you. So that's not going to charge up your Athenes. So that's kind of a bummer. They do that so that you don't accidentally like steal kills off of the Tidecaller's Blessing. So you don't get credit for that, but I'm like 99% sure that's how it works. Unless you know, give yourself the bonus. But anyways, yeah, just good all-around champion. Really good trading. Single ability. Does both your offense and your defense. Scales for the laning phase and scales for the mid-game team fights in the late game. You don't have to worry about switching around abilities. It's just all ebb and flow all the time. Really good with Athenes that we just mentioned. Really good with Ardent Sensor. You can spread it around to a lot of multiple targets. Pretty respectable scaling with your AP. It's not as strong as something like a Sona or a Soraka because your heal is on a really long cooldown. It's 10 seconds versus, Sona's ends up being like 4 seconds. Soraka's is like 2 seconds. So that's one of the knocks against her late game is that she does have long cooldowns on her abilities. But it's really good at that. Really good at zone control, offense and defense. You can speed up your allies so that Olaf can, run in there and stick to people better, or the Darius, or you can run away from the Darius or the Olaf with that. Your W, or your R rather, is on a pretty low cooldown. Once again, really good for engage or really good for, disengage. So she's just flexible. She's kind of like Rakan in that she's just very flexible. She has lots of offensive abilities and defensive abilities. Pretty good when ahead, pretty respectable when behind because you have multiple pieces of CC and you have healing and shielding, which scales really well on a low economy. So it's all around strong champion. You have to get used to playing her. The bubble can be kind of weird to land if you're not used to her, but I just think that she's great because she's long range, good at offense, good at defense, good itemization. She's just kind of a jack of all trades right now. So I recommend going Airy, Mana Flow Band, Absolute Focus, and Scorch, and then probably Bone Plating and Revitalize. You can still go for the boots plus the biscuits if you want. They did nerf the biscuits, but if you're against a heavy poke lane, you're against a Zyra, you're against, a Sona, or maybe even a Janna or something, who's going for the Comet Janna, then, maybe you could go for biscuits there. But I think Bone Plating and Revitalize is probably pretty good, especially against all-in champs that Bone Plating comes in clutch. Then it's Mobility Boots, Frostfang, Athenes, Ardent Sense, Redemption. Not much wiggle room here. You can go Redemption instead of Ardent if your AD carry is really underperforming as your second item, but otherwise those are the 3 items that you want to get. You almost always want Athenes first. Number 2 and 3, you got a bit more flexibility. Okay, Leona. So Leona did get a buff on this patch. I do think that she is quite strong. She does have a couple of things that set her apart from some of the other all-in champions out there. The most notable one is that she has a really low cooldown on her ult compared to pretty much every other engaged champion. 90 seconds. Very, very low cooldown on this ult. It has 1200 range to engage, so it can go through minion waves. All of her stuff goes through minion waves. Another common theme you'll notice between a lot of these champions is that it doesn't matter the positioning on the wave. You can still do stuff. Now, she can go through minions, but I will say that the lane positioning on the minions actually does matter. If you're pushing them into the tower constantly, then it's actually pretty hard to engage with her. So you really want to try to keep that wave in the middle of the lane if you can, and then try to zone them out. Just stand up right on that front line and look scary is usually the best way that you want to posture with her. And with a lot of these hook champions, that's what you want to do until you get enough armor to where you can dive. But yeah, so they lowered the cooldown on this 5 seconds, which is pretty nice. That means you're likely going to get this off, twice in most fights pretty comfortably, and sometimes even maybe 3 times once you get enough CDR. It's really good. She puts out quite a shocking amount of damage if you're getting all of your sunlight procs in there. So if you go in, with your E, your AD carry auto attacks, and then you apply the shield and then the eclipse, if you get 3 of these hits in a fight, at level 5, that's 150 extra damage. So you can usually pretty comfortably get 2 of them in. But if you can get all 3, that's nice. They did change around her eclipse to where that you get a flat damage reduction as you level this up. So guess what that's good against? Zyra plants. That's right. So anything like Zyra plants or dots from Brand, Zyra, things like Scorch, things like Comet, all of this is going to get reduced quite a bit. Almost ready, dear. All of this is going to get reduced quite a bit in there, so that change is specifically good against some of the types of champions that are really popular right now. The poke champs of Scorch, Airy, Comet, Zyra, Brand, all of that's pretty good. So I think that, her value is going up quite a bit here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just this change that they did a few patches ago, very good against poke. Daybreak just got a buff. Really long engage range that can go through minions on a low cooldown. I do think that going for... now, I've tried this out, but Presence of Mind I haven't seen a lot of Leona's doing this build, but I do think that it's really good. It's been working very well on Pike for a long time. It's been working great for me on Thresh. Um, so I do think that that has a lot of potential there, so that you're not going to be able to get CC'd as easily, chain CC'd. You're going to be able to walk around and apply these daybreaks to people, and then you're going to have your ult up even more often with presence of mind. So she still can have kind of a tough matchup against things like Morgana, Tahm Kench, Thresh. Fortunately, Tahm Kench has just really been smashed out of the meta. You can ban Morgana, which I highly recommend most of the time. That champion's just a pest against a lot of engaged champs. And, Thresh, you have the potential to outplay Thresh, especially at lower elo brackets. They're probably not going to flay back your E. When you get to higher brackets, it can get a bit trickier, but you're going to have to just position yourself to where he's not going to be able to flay back that E, or you open up with your ult first and then E in. Okay. Yeah, just really good. Excellent all-in damage. Has had several buffs. The meta's shifting around towards something that's good for her, which is kind of this aggressive style and then roaming around, skirmishing. Especially with the rise of Zyra. She's one of the better all-ins because not only does she have resistance to the plants through her Eclipse, but her E goes through the plants also. So she cannot block your engage with her plants. So she can block Thresh hooks, Nautilus hooks, Pike hooks, all of that stuff she can block with her plants. She cannot block your E. It goes straight through the plants, and you get on her and kill her. Okay, so it makes her particularly good against Zyra. Now, Zyra is still pretty good against Leona, too, because she's going to outrange you. She's going to have poke advantage over you, and she can still blow you up with her ult, probably. So it's not like it's, you automatically smash Zyra. But I'm just saying that she's one of the better champs. If any champ, all-in champ, is going to have a chance against Zyra in lane, it's going to be Leona. So pretty a better matchup than a lot of other supports against Zyra in the laning phase. Outside of things like Xerath, Vel'Koz, Lux, those poke type of champs. Okay, and then finally, Yuumi that we'll talk about here, and then the other stuff I'll just mention really briefly because we do have to get out of here. But I did want to give you guys, I didn't want to, have you wait another 4 days before the support tier list came out. I want to give you something. So like I said, it kind of caught me off guard because I thought we were going to have another day, but anyways, some people probably like the faster format. We'll see. But okay, Yuumi. So why Yuumi? So Yuumi is kind of like the support version of what I think is a problem that's been going on in League all season that has a lot of people frustrated, which is super powerful champions having a very low win rate in solo queue. And that has been the case with a ton of different champions throughout this season. And I think it's just really frustrating for a lot of people because you'll see Yuumi pick banned and all the pros will be telling you she's super OP, but then you go and you look at win rates and you're just like, my God, that champion has a 43% win rate in Platinum, right? Literally the lowest. And then you'll see other things in pro play. You'll see a Zyra, pick banned all the time. Irelia, Corki, Ezreal, Sylas. All of these champions are just pros will tell you they're OP, and you see them and they look OP in the games, but then in solo queue, it's what's going on? Why is nobody good on these champions? And so I talked about this. Check my patch notes video. I talk about it for 10 minutes. Sort of what one of the major problems with consistency is in Season 9. And Yuumi is a victim of that. So I think that you kind of have to put her in Tier 1 or Tier 2 because the best case scenario for her, she's so good, and if you can get proficient on her, if you're good at hitting all of your Qs, if you're good with the decision making and where you're going and who you're healing late game, she's just a nightmare. She's so hard to beat in the mid to late game. I think that she is the best enchanter overall if you're good with her. She's just not as consistent as Nami, so I put her down a little bit from Nami, but she's got her Q, very long range, a homing missile that in theory, if you practice it a lot, you should be able to hit somebody almost every time with this. Yes, they did nerf the later game empowered damage with her by 50, which is massive. But in the laning phase, they left that still pretty good. It's still 120 damage for 3 points in this with a 0.65 ratio. Still applies a slow. Still, slows him so that Comet's going to hit him. So it still puts out quite a lot of poke. especially when combined with Comet, Scorch, and Cut Down, which is still going to be the main combo there. And then, of course, you can't be targeted. This basically reads, can't target you most of the time unless your ally dies. You and me. The adaptive force doesn't really matter most of the time. Zoomies, it's just a huge amount of burst healing later on. I mean, it says this maximum healing is 161. I don't know if that's accurate. That seems really weird to me. But regardless of all these numbers here, I'm just here to tell you that thing puts up a lot of damage. A lot of healing. Like, the burst healing on this is extreme, if you see this, especially when combined with Athene's Unholy Grail, and you can stack up Athene's really easily by hitting a few of your Qs early. So, yeah, I think she's very, very strong right now. And then, of course, this ult ends up being on a fairly low cooldown. You take Presence of Mind plus Cut Down, so it's even on a lower cooldown. Has a massive hitbox, really long range. It's so hard to engage onto anybody, because as soon as you engage, she's going to pop both. Remember, this has 2 charges. She's going to pop both triggers of Zoomies, plus her Athene's healing. She's going to burst heal them for like 700 or 800, and then she's going to pop, and this is also going to give them a huge amount of bonus movement speed, and then she's going to pop Final Chapter, stun your whole team for almost 2 seconds, anyone that followed up on that engage, and then your team's just going to counter engage, and they're going to die. Like, that's what happens a lot with Yuumi. So it's just so difficult to get a hold of her. And then there's all those nasty combos, too, where she can pop on invisible champions like Rengar and Eve and run around and just obliterate people. You know, she can just play on anybody. She's so flexible late game. She's so dominant early game with her auto attacks, giving her that, you know, shield every 20 seconds that you can pass on your allies with the consistency of her Q. She's just a menace early game. Now, she's not as good at skirmishing if no one on your team is fed. So if game's about even, she's not as good at, like, the little, you know, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, you know, stuff around the map. But if they do have someone that's fed, then she can be good at skirmishing too. So if you have a fed Jax, you have a fed Camille or whatever, then you can just run around with that person and just, you know, destroy everybody. Because it's just impossible to run away from her, because she's got the slow on the Q, she's got the E speed up, she's got the burst healing, she's got the Final Chapter. She's just so sticky, you know, when she's on one of your allies, that you can go around with those champions and just skirmish and burst everybody. And she's obviously good at team fights. So I just think there are a lot of conditions where she's going to excel in the current meta. She has really good itemization, being able to get Athene's an Ardent Sensor, and then also even being able to scale really well into a Magi if you're ahead, because it's so unlikely that you're going to die if you're sticking with someone who's really far ahead. So yeah, I just think that makes her super strong right now. You can go for the Comet. Some people are going for Aerie. Aerie's better for mid-game. Comet's better for early game. I think that Cut Down is still where you want to be, even after the nerf. People are still going to have more health than you. It's still going to give you extra damage. You really want Presence of Mind. It's so strong, and there's just not anything better for her in that tree, I don't think. And so Frostfang, Athene's definitely. Some people go brown boots or just skip boots altogether. I like Ionian boots because you are going to have to ward. You are going to have to rotate sometimes when someone's not with you. And having the extra cooldown reduction on your summoner spells is very handy. So I think she's very good. It is awkward to put a 43% win rate champion in Tier 1. But I'm just telling you, like, I hate to play against her. I think she's just impossible to deal with in the mid game unless your team is insanely far ahead or unless she's just bad. And she is banned a lot too. That's another thing that's just kind of funky looking, right? It's like, is she the most banned support? Pyke is, but she's almost the most banned champion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So she's the 6th most banned champion among all roles, everything. And she's the 3rd most banned support. So people ban Pyke the most, Morgana, and then Yuumi. But still, 43% win rate champion that's drawing like that many bans, that's drawing a 33% ban is just really weird. But that's just what it is. That's just 2019 Season 9. You just can't risk it. You know, if there's a really good Yuumi player, it's impossible to deal with. Okay, that's about all that we have time for today. I'll just hit the others just super fast here. Lux did go up a little bit faster than, or not quite as much as I'd anticipated, but she did go up about 2.5%. I thought she might go up 4 or 5% off of those buffs. I still think she's really good, especially against Zyra. You definitely want to consider going like maybe AP Lux. And when I say AP Lux, I don't mean getting Ludens. I mean taking Sorcery, taking Comet, and then still getting Athene's and Ardent Sensor, but just taking Comet and going in the Sorcery tree with Scorch. She's very, very good at poking out Zyra. Zyra doesn't have any healing, and Lux outranges her, so I think that's a good matchup for her. So going for kind of the Comet Lux again, or even Airy Lux I've seen, just something that has more poke early instead of Aftershock, can be good against some of these enchanters, although Aftershock, you definitely still want that against stuff like Leona. Yeah, Lux is still going to be good, still good at team fighting. Some of her stuff has been nerfed, so it's not quite as oppressive as it once was, though she's still going to be pretty strong, especially if you're looking for a burst or just like a poke champion against something like Zyra or Brand. Then she can be a good pick. Pyke, still really strong. A lot of people still have him tier 1. I've played him. I mean, yeah, I'm not the best Pyke in the world, but some of the stuff I've critiqued about him in the past, I think still holds. Like, he feels really bad when he's behind. Like, his CC is very limited. It's very conditional. Yes, you have the hook. Your E is really dangerous to E forward into the enemy to try to get that stun, because you're just going to get blown up. A lot of times you're still going to be very squishy. So unless it's an all-in, it's really, really difficult. It's tough to peel with him. It's awkward to peel with him because you have to position kind of like really forward so that you can pull them off of your AD carry, because if you're behind your AD carry or beside your AD carry, then you try to hook them, you're just going to pull them closer to your AD carry. So that's kind of awkward. And then so many people are just so used to playing against him, and there's so many troll things that stop you from getting your ult off. It just sucks. Like, when you're playing Pyke, it's so frustrating. Like, people can flash it, people can dash away from it, people can have Hourglass or Stopwatch and stopwatch it, people can, use their heal spell or just have some kind of burst healing. The Enchanter can heal them. There's just so many things that can, like, just punch you in the face when you're trying to get your ult off to execute somebody. And your ult is far worse if it's not an execute. It does almost no damage if you don't get the kill, so he's good. If you snowball, if you can constantly hook some of these squishy champions, then he can take over the game. He's very good at skirmishes, roaming. He's good at all that. On paper, his offense, top-notch, probably one of the best offensive supports in the game. It's just defense. If you're behind, if you don't have the gold to get the big items, if they just constantly are just punching you in the face when you're trying to get your ult off, he's a problem. So I think he's really inconsistent. When he's great, he's amazing, but when he's average or like not doing well in a game, then he just feels really worthless. So he's a little too conditional for my taste, but I do respect that he can completely take over games. He's one of the best 1v9 supports if you get going. So I put him up here at tier 2, although he could sneak in at lower tier 1. Okay, Bard is one of the final ones I'll talk about here. He's good. He's just kind of like in the Pyke camp for me. It's like he's very aggressive, early on. But for me, unless you play him a lot, he's just too inconsistent. You just have to get a lot of practice getting those stuns. Using your ult properly. But he does have really good roaming. He can put out really good damage. He has decent healing. So he's okay. He's just really tricky to play correctly. And I think he can play better than Pyke when he's behind because he still has his stun. He still has his ult. But you just need to practice him a lot, I think. Like, he does feel really – like, when I play against him, I do not like playing against him. He's very frustrating. But a lot of that is because I'm playing against one-trick Pykes also. So, I don't know. He does have a really high win rate right now. I'm just going to say, like, if you want to play Pyke, you need to play him a lot. Maybe not as much as you would need to play Thresh, but I still think he's one of probably like the top 3 hardest to play supports to play at a really optimal level. So practice him. He can be good if you want to play him, but he's not going to be for everybody. Janna is the one that's kind of for everybody. She has the highest win rate. She's ultra consistent. Regardless of how the game goes, you're going to have a powerful shield. You're going to have your ult. You can still disrupt and peel. I just have her down a bit lower just because she can't really start fights. She is one of the team reliant supports in a sense. She's one of the like cornerstone Team Reliant supports, right? And where you're shielding, you're peeling, you're healing, but you can't start fights. You can't burst people out by yourself. And specifically, your AD carry needs to be good, or someone who has like AD, because your shield gives a lot of extra AD. And so, like, you know, shielding your Azir is not going to do that much. It'll help him some, but not a lot. So you really need to have an AD person that's fed on your team that you can play around. But if you do have that, if you do have a Jinx that's fed, if you do have, you know, a Kai'Sa that's fed, she can be super good. So if tanks ever come back, or if like diving bruisers ever start coming like back into the meta big time, then she's really going to take off. So she's already strong, but I could easily see her going back to 54 or 55%. So she is very, very good. If you do want to play her, maybe try the Comet build out against like early melee champs, just so you have some aggression in the laning phase. But I don't know. Aerie's still really good in the mid game, but yeah, she's okay. Then the final one, Sona, still good, still the most consistent champ out there. You know, there's no skill shots other than your ult, which has a huge hitbox. You just press Q, press W. You can take over the game if you're auto-filled, or if you just want like a really low mechanical champion that's going to be very consistent for you. Sona's great. She still scales really well. They did take away some of her scaling by nerfing her Q, but it's still good. It's still reliable poke in lane. She's still the queen of team fights. The problem is she just gets blasted by any like highly mobile, high damage champion, which is basically everything in this meta. But, you know, kind of like Janna, if we ever start seeing champions like Sejuani, Ornn, Maokai, Sion, if some of these tanks start creeping back into the meta, you know, if they nerf Conquer or something like that over the next couple of patches, you know, she'll definitely come roaring back. But that nerf did hit her a lot harder than I thought it would. You know, she was like 54, 55% before that nerf to her Q, and now she's 50. So definitely there's something going on there. I think she just doesn't scale as well, and she's still super vulnerable, but she can be good. Okay, that's going to be it for this tier list. Hopefully you enjoyed it. This is going to be a bit of a quicker one. Just come by, check out the stream if you have some more questions about other champions I didn't get to cover, or you have some really cool new builds or ideas that you've seen that you want to talk about. It's 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time most nights, Sunday through Thursday on YouTube, and then Twitch is going to be Friday and Saturday. And hi. Okay, we're coming, Rory. She says, Rory says, I'm ready for the trip. But yeah, we'll be on there. Now, I am going to be on this trip, so I'm not going to be streaming tonight, Friday night, Saturday night, or Sunday night. But I will be back on Monday. I'm going to release a video that's going to explain sort of my timetable here. But just come by. We'd love to have you as soon as we get back. And that'll be it. Have a good day.